Hi, and welcome to The Leader's Edge, our weekly live interview show where Georgia Donaldson and I, Emily Chiwa, good morning, Georgia, we feature successful CEOs and professionals who are so kind to share their stories with us. We want to bring awareness, inspiration, and leadership tips for you to action to help you sharpen your competitive advantage and make a positive impact in your organization and community. Remember, if you are watching us live or even catching the replay, you can leave a comment on LinkedIn for any of our speakers to address. Today, we have with us Lisa Feveck, and she wants to shed some light with us on menopause. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, morning to you both.
Hi,
Morning.
Lisa.
Great,
Welcome.
Thank
great.
you.
And Georgia is going to introduce Lisa properly in a second, but we do want, I want to invite you to consider a couple of questions, as we always do before we get into the meat of the matter. So, have you guys noticed that we do not talk about menopause much? I'm curious, if you notice that, why is that? And also, could an increasing knowledge about menopause and its potential impact make our workplaces feel more inclusive or even more effective? So I'm just wanting you to think of those things as we invite Lisa on. And I think this topic is important, not just for women and women of a certain stage in life, because again, life is a cycle. We all go through different stages, but also for men, because it can increase our awareness, sensitivity, and understanding, and also normalize discussing a very normal process that is occurring every single day. So, with that, Georgia, let's begin.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Emily. Monday morning, the 28th of April, and we have the wonderful, the lovely Lisa Feveck with us. Lisa, this one is interesting because we say we're shedding light on menopause. And when we talk about light, we remember that you first and foremost, as your career, an engineer, an electrical engineer. So you were dealing with light. And now
Exactly.
you have moved into the realm of registered dietitian.
hmm
I can hardly think of anybody else who has moved from electrical engineer to registered dietitian. Not only moving to being a registered dietitian, you specialize now as a menopause. You specialize on menopause, and
Yeah,
you want to bring awareness to women and generally
exactly.
everybody out there because
hmm
once you're a woman, you're dealing with so many other people. You're an aunt, you're a mother, you're a sister.
Yeah,
And when you go through menopause, the people around you are also affected by what you go through.
yeah,
So, Lisa,
exactly.
you tell us now, take us from that journey of electrical engineer into registered dietitian and now focusing on menopause.
Well, first, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on your show. I feel like a little local celebrity because I've been watching you all for so long. So I'm glad to be here. But yeah, I had no real intention of being in the healthcare space. My dad, my uncles, both my granddads worked Tech. So it was a natural progression for me to find something in Tech to do. So I became an electrical engineer and I started working actually in the field in the central area. So when your current would go, I'm the person they call, right, to
Ah,
be in charge of it. So I did that for a few years, but unfortunately, I had to have two spinal surgeries. So I was forced with a choice of working in the office, doing writing proposals and documentation for the company, or retiring medical. And what I loved about being an engineer was the impact I had on the people. So we would get letters saying, "Thank you for putting street lights in the area. My daughter feels safe to walk home now." Or, "Thank you for bringing lights to the community, electricity to our homes. Our children don't have to do homework by candlelight or lamps anymore." So that was the sort of gratification I got from the job, how my work in some small way impacted the community. So when I was given the choice, I was like, okay, no, an office job isn't for me. That is not what would bring me joy. So I chose to retire medical, but I was left with, okay, what to do now
Yeah.
while going through that recovery phase of that major surgery. So that's how I started. And Unfortunately, not knowing the direction, I got depressed. I couldn't cook for myself. I couldn't do much for myself.
Oh
I was
my.
sort of living on medication because of the pain. So I was like, okay, I talked to my doctor and he said, okay, go to a dietitian and get some assistance with that. Unfortunately, the assistance I got didn't really support me at that point. I basically got a diet sheet and said, come back in 3 months. And I was even more confused.
Oh my.
And it didn't serve me at all. But what I eventually, it led me to becoming a dietitian myself because I said, okay, if no one is going to help me the way I think I need to be helped, I'm going to do it myself. And
Right.
I just so happened to see an ad in the paper saying you can do a degree and become a dietitian, and that's how I got started.
Oh
Oh,
my
wow.
word. Isn't that some look at that journey? Yes.
Yeah.
So trying to help
The
So,
yourself and then you
university too,
know
yeah.
into helping other people.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
So this is how you became the dietitian, but why menopause? Why the
Right.
passion around that? So how did that
Yeah.
evolve now? Tell
So
the
in my,
story.
yes, another story. My life is a full of stories. So I think I had just started my MPhil in UE and I started getting all these weird symptoms and I was in my 30s. Didn't start with the traditional hot flashes or mood swings. I started with a persistent toothache that came and went. Every time I went to the dentist, you'd look at me like, why are you back? Nothing is wrong. Can't find anything. It progressed to anxiety. Are you getting feedback from me?
A
No,
little,
we're
but
good.
you can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. It progressed to anxiety, depression, and heart palpitations,
Oh my.
and a lot of memory loss, memory issues. So I started to think again, nothing wrong. Blood tests came back normal. So I started to think, okay, maybe is it early onset Alzheimer's? Am I going crazy? Am I having heart issues? So it was a lot of weird symptoms and the joint pain, the muscle pain, but
Oh,
no one said menopause because I
right.
was in my 30s and the blood work always came back normal. And I said, okay, by the 10th medication for another symptom, I was like, okay, I cannot do this anymore. I know it's more than just stress from work or whatever it is. I know something else is going on. So,
Mm.
being a dietitian, I have access to clinical studies and other websites that people don't have access to. So, I went back into the research and then I realized, oh, there are actually 100 symptoms or over 100 symptoms of menopause, and I'm just getting the ones that aren't normal. So
Wow.
that's
Right.
how I figured out.
Right. The
And in
normal
my
ones would be like hot
30s,
flashes and
yeah,
like the
some
Mood
headache and
swings.
stuff like that.
the ones people normally
Yes.
associate
Mood
menopause
swings.
with.
Yes.
I didn't have any of those. And I was in my
Yeah.
30s. So the
Toothache
doctors never
and
thought
heart issues. Yeah.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So they kept saying stress or work or,
Which are the
different things.
usual
But they,
things for. Mm-hmm.
right. And
Yeah.
they were treating symptoms instead of the underlying cause.
So
Right.
I'm curious, and this is amazing. So you came upon these studies, I guess. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe at this point you're probably feeling very desperate. You're probably extremely persuaded.
Very desperate
Probably like
for answers.
because I don't know if most people realize, but when you have a medical condition that you do not understand, you cannot diagnose. It is mind-boggling. It's
Oh
like the
yeah.
worst thing ever
Yeah,
because you don't know what's wrong, so you can't. You feel
yeah,
like you can't deal with it because you don't know what you're dealing with.
And that brings
exactly.
on stress.
Yeah, so it could be a
Exactly.
cycle in itself, right? It could be a cycle in itself, and
Yeah, it felt like a
which
never
explains
ending
the
cycle.
depression, which could explain why you were feeling, that depression at that time as well, because it,
Yes,
it
yes,
makes
it fed into it. Yeah,
mm.
definitely.
So I'm
Yeah,
interested. You figured out that it was, I guess it would have been perimenopause
perimenopause at that
symptoms
point.
that you
Yes.
were having,
Hmm.
and then what? You started getting treatment for the perimenopause at that point in time. Like, how did it evolve beyond that?
Yeah. Well, back then these studies were still very few, far in between. The doctors still weren't convinced it was menopause, so putting me on medication wasn't an option. And then the choices available weren't many as well. So I went back into what I knew best, lifestyle changes. So
Right.
I sort of pieced out, okay, what worked for me, what didn't work for me. what were the local foods that worked for me, what were the physical activity that would work for me. And then that mindset, I think, is the most important thing, because I realized for myself, and the studies confirm it, the more positive you are, your positive outlook actually affects how you experience menopause and those symptoms.
Right.
So if you're
Definitely.
more depressed, if you have panic attacks,
Wow.
and you stay in that negative space, and I'm not discounting people's symptoms, but if you don't find ways to relax more and do that self-care, the hot flashes you experience are actually worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I sort of had to figure out from research and from my own sort of self-discovery what worked and what didn't work. And that's how I
Wow.
developed my programs.
Okay. Good. So
Interesting.
Lisa, you have now moved Lisa into helping people, and you also go into
Yeah.
organizations and talk to organizations so they can help their people. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So one of the symptoms that really shocked me was women experiencing suicidal thoughts because of menopause.
Wow.
And that I couldn't wrap my head around, because not menopause is, like you said, Emily, a natural part of a woman's progression through life.
Mm-hmm.
All women will go through menopause, whether we accept it or not. Um, we will all go through menopause, and most of us start in our 30s. Black women and brown women start their journey in their 30s,
I
and the
think
way
that
they
is the important thing. That's one of
Mm,
the, when we talk about shedding light, I think that's
yeah.
one of the important things. I think in
Yes.
your 30s, nobody, at
Nobody
least I
thinks of
wasn't
that.
thinking of
Mhm.
menopause in my 30s. You're thinking
Yeah.
still, probably if you haven't had children yet. I was thinking of children in
Hmm.
in your 30s, settle it down, but not menopause. So interesting. So
Hmm.
perimenopause starts for a lot of us in our 30s, and we
For a
don't
lot of us.
recognize it.
You don't
And so
recognize it.
Yeah.
it's often silent. It's happening
Exactly.
in the
And when I
background.
go into companies and I may go for simple healthy eating talk, and then they realize, oh, you deal with menopause. I always had this question. And when I start talking, the conversation quickly switches to menopause, because all of them are in their 30s and they realize, oh, the symptoms I'm experiencing is actually perimenopause, and nobody has told me. It
Okay.
explains so much. You get that light bulb moment, that shed any light,
Mm-hmm.
that awareness. Because
So
all of them in the room, sorry?
what are some of these symptoms that people are experiencing in their 30s that causes these light bulb
Yeah.
moments? I'm curious.
Right. So you have the physical symptoms of the well, everyone knows the hot flashes. But what I tell clients is start from the top of your head and work your way down. And literally anything and everything that could go wrong with that body part can be attributed to menopause. So if you start at the top, brittle hair, dry hair, losing hair, growing hair in other parts of your body that it's not supposed to grow in, the joint pain, the muscle pain, rashes, bruising that you didn't weren't aware of, the toothache, the
Oh.
earache, brittle, the dry eyes, the itchy eyes,
Hmm.
digestive
That's menopause
issues,
related.
uh,
I guess every
literally everything. Yeah,
Wow. This is really shedding light for me.
right.
so
So
okay. So
people
go
will,
ahead. I'm curious. So I'm really curious as to why all of these things are so connected to this idea of perimenopause and menopause. But go ahead. Let's hear.
yeah. So you have the physical symptoms. So people will
Right.
think, oh, I slept bad, and that's when my shoulder hurting,
Yeah.
not knowing it's menopause. But then you have the emotional and mental side of it. All the memory issues, brain fog. Some women forget how to the routes to go home, and they've driven it many times. They
Hmm.
forget people's names, and they're accustomed talking to them. They forget words. It's at the tip of the tongue, and they don't know. They can't remember.
Yeah.
So, giving speeches, doing presentations in work, all of those things are affected. And then you have panic attacks, depression, and as I said, the suicidal thoughts that come in. And there's natural menopause where your body's naturally losing the hormones, it's fluctuating and decreasing. But
Right.
then you have these surgical ones where if you have a hysterectomy, whether it's partial or full, immediately you go into menopause. If
Right.
you're having
Okay.
breast cancer treatments, most women enter into menopause too, and their body is shoved into menopause because there's no natural
Because you have to
progression or
remove the
transition.
because you have to
Right.
remove the hormones, the estrogen from your body.
Right.
Well,
And it's,
the hormones that
yeah,
may be impacting.
exactly.
But when you have a hysterectomy, and don't they leave in your ovaries? Does it matter?
If it's a partial hysterectomy,
Partial.
yes.
But
But
wouldn't that mean that you
it's
wouldn't get?
supposed to. Many women still experience menopausal symptoms, and these
Okay,
research is showing
and then
that.
there's weight gain, right? It kind of
Oh my
pushes your
gosh,
body into
the weight
yeah.
gain, you haven't.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most women complain about that. They haven't changed their diets, they haven't changed their
Mm-hmm.
physical activity, and the weight is coming on. They will pass a bakery and gain 5 pounds, and it's like, why is this happening
It's
to me?
probably bakery.
And it can be frustrating, it could be
Yeah.
overwhelming, it could be really depressive, and it's just that's where I try to help to bring that awareness to let
Mm-hmm.
women know it's not your fault. This
Right.
is just what happens. It's the estrogen dropping. So let's find solutions, whether it's medication, whether it's change in lifestyle, or a combination of both. We
Mm-hmm.
have answers. It's just to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I mean,
Okay.
I think from what I've read too, I mean, with the hormonal changes, obviously, that partly is the affecting the mood, right? Because there's an estrogen part of. There's one of them that's
Yeah,
one called more of the happy hormone. I can't recall which one,
yeah.
whether it was the
So,
progesterone or the estrogen, but I know like the
mm,
balance of it kind of
yes,
allows us to go in that
Affects your
negative
moods.
space, which
Yes.
is
exactly.
interestingly why you would say rebalancing ourselves by doing things to
Yeah,
increase our positive the way we feel from a
exactly.
internal positive drive, not slapping the positivity on, I always say, but
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
increasing the well-being is what's going to help with the balance. Yeah,
exactly,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Ladies, can you believe it is 17 minutes after 7? We could go
See,
on and on. So,
and
Lisa, as we
on.
try to bring this to a wrap, what would you say to women who are going through these symptoms? Give them some words of comfort or actions that they can take.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, especially for women in the workplace, I
Mm-hmm.
did some studies that came out last year, and they show that when managers actually acknowledge their symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
they felt better and did better at work.
Ah,
So one is bringing that awareness to yourself and to wherever you work. So having a conversation with someone like myself who can explain your symptoms, make you realize it's not your fault. So you're giving
mm-hmm.
yourself grace, you're giving yourself that sort of self-love. And then for the managers, just to acknowledge what your workers are going through, maybe have some sessions where you're, again, bringing someone like me that can
Mm-hmm.
explain what menopause is,
Right.
explain the symptoms, and then what can you do at work? What can you do at home? If it's a simple thing like every week on a lunchtime, someone comes in and does a yoga session
Mm-hmm.
or a deep breathing session, that little thing helps tremendously.
Okay. So
Or you
practical,
go for a
practical
walk,
things that
Yeah,
we can.
oh, very
go for
practical.
a
Not something that doesn't cost a lot because your company is going to watch the bottom line. How much is it
Yes.
going to cost me? But to
Yes.
find solutions that can help your workers so that they
Mm-hmm.
don't take time off, they're not affected, they could produce what they're supposed to produce better, but that your workers also feel validated that, okay, yes, you're acknowledging what I'm going through,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, you're willing to work with me to find some sort of solution.
Right. So the more we shed light on it is the more we help people, not keep it in the
Exactly.
dark. Okay.
Exactly.
yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Emily, this was wonderful. Lisa, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thank you
Over to
so
you now,
much,
Emily, to
Lisa.
wrap.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so many ways to think of wrapping it, but I feel like, one of the ideas I mentioned from the start when we opened was about normalizing this
Mm-hmm.
idea of
Mhm.
menopause, like
Yeah.
really switching on the light, recognizing it is very normal,
Yep.
and therefore let's talk about it,
Hmm.
realizing that people from as early as their 30s could be
Mm-hmm.
experiencing
Yeah.
symptoms of menopause. So,
Yes.
notice that, be aware of that, educate yourself on that,
Mm.
um, have talks with people like Lisa about it. And
Yeah.
there's a lot more, I think, information on there. But when you do listen to professionals, or like I've listened to a couple people talk about it on podcasts and stuff, and the women always lament that there's still so little research
Oh yeah.
comparatively on women and
Mm-hmm.
women's issues than there are men.
Yeah.
But it is increasing, and
Yes, it
you
is.
can educate yourself. So be mindful. I mean, that toothache you might be having that is somehow not going away and cannot be
Mm-hmm.
explained might be
Yes.
menopause, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
the end of the world. So allow yourself to not go into like a negative spiral place,
Right.
but
Yeah.
know that there are things that can be done. There are lots more options now than there were.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sure when Lisa
definitely.
was going through this, so
Yeah,
and
definitely.
resources. So I feel like,
Yeah.
that to me is the call. And I mean, if
Mhm.
you are working in an organization, 30s and 40s and 50s, that would be the average age of people in your team.
Yes.
So I mean, there are people in your team that is being affected. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think be curious, and wellness is an important aspect of life. So let's embrace all aspects of wellness. So
Yes.
thank
Always be
you
open
again.
and curious. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you again, Lisa, for
Thank
shedding
you,
some light
Lisa.
on
Well,
menopause
you're
this
most
morning with
welcome.
us, and opening this up so our leaders can think about that as they
Yeah.
go through this week. So
Yes,
Thank you for
yes,
yes.
having me
yes,
I think this is
appreciate
the
it.
only show that Lisa hasn't listened to because she is the guest.
because I'm here.
Thank you for also being such a wonderful
Okay,
you
take care,
all.
everybody.
Okay. Bye
Bye
bye.
now.
Bye.